You're on the couch again. The laptop is open. The cursor is blinking. The document is still empty. You know exactly what you should be doing. You've known for weeks. Maybe months. And instead of doing it, you're scrolling. Again. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a familiar voice starts up. The same voice it always is. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just do the thing? Everyone else can. You're just lazy. That's the problem. You've always been lazy. But what if that voice is lying? What if the real answer is far stranger, and far more uncomfortable? What if you're not lazy at all? What if your nervous system learned, somewhere along the way, that it's not safe to try? There's a word that never appears in the self-help aisle. Shutdown. Your body doesn't have one response to danger. It has a ladder. A researcher named Stephen Porges spent his career mapping it, and he found something that changes how every word of this should sound. When you're threatened, your nervous system tries the newest, most sophisticated rung first. Connection. You reach out. You talk. You read the room. If that fails, it drops to the older rung. Fight or flight. Your heart pounds. Your muscles load. Your attention narrows to the threat. But there's a third rung, and this is the one nobody talks about. It's the oldest rung on the ladder. Older than mammals. Older than fear itself. When fighting is hopeless and running is impossible, the system stops trying. It powers down. Your heart rate drops. Your body goes heavy. Your mind goes quiet and gray. The scientific name for it is the dorsal vagal response. The plain name for it is shutdown. Here's the part that should terrify the productivity industry. Shutdown is not a failure. It's a strategy. It's what a nervous system does when it has learned, from real evidence, that effort doesn't work. And your nervous system is a learning machine. It doesn't care about your goals. It cares about survival. It keeps a ledger. Every time you try and get hurt, it writes that down. Every time you push and nothing changes, it writes that down too. And one day, the ledger reaches a conclusion. It's not safe to want things. It's not safe to try. From that day on, the body doesn't wait for the danger. It skips straight to the shutdown, to save you the trouble. A man named Martin Seligman discovered this by accident, and the discovery is so uncomfortable that 100 years of motivational posters have tried to bury it. It was 1967. He was working with dogs in a lab at the University of Pennsylvania, studying something completely different. The setup was simple. A box divided in two. A low wall between the halves. A mild shock on one side. Any normal dog, placed in that box, learns in seconds. Jump the wall. Escape. But the dogs in Seligman's first group didn't jump. They had been through something first. They had been given shocks they couldn't escape, no matter what they did. And by the time they reached the box, they had already learned the most important lesson of their lives. Nothing I do matters. So they lay down. They whimpered. They took the shock. They didn't even try. Seligman called it learned helplessness. The world called it a scandal. Because the implication was right there in the data. Given enough evidence that effort is useless, any living thing will stop making effort. Not because it's weak. Because it's smart. It learned. Now ask yourself the question nobody in the gym asks. What has your life been teaching you? Because here's the uncomfortable translation. Procrastination is often learned helplessness wearing a different costume. Avoidance is the nervous system answering a question you didn't even know you asked. What happens if I try? And numbness is not an absence of feeling. It's a surplus of protection. Your system looked at the situation, ran the numbers, and decided the cheapest way to survive was to turn the volume down on everything. You don't feel lazy. You feel flat. There's a difference. Laziness is a choice about effort. Flatness is a state of the nervous system. And the difference matters, because you can't shame a nervous system into changing. You can only teach it. Where does the ledger come from? For most people, it was written early. The largest study ever done on this is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and it followed more than 17,000 adults. The researchers, Vincent Felitti and Robert Anda, asked people about their childhoods. divorce, violence, neglect, a parent who struggled. Then they looked at their adult lives. And the pattern was brutal. The more adversity a child survives, the more likely that adult is to struggle with depression, with addiction, with their health, with the simple act of starting things. 2 out of 3 people in that study had at least one ACE. The nervous system of a child in an unpredictable world learns one rule above all others. Nothing I do makes this better. You didn't choose that lesson. It was taught to you by the world you happened to be born into, before you had words for any of it. But childhood isn't the only teacher. Chronic stress is a teacher. And it's a relentless one. A neuroscientist named Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying what sustained stress does to a brain, and the short version is this. Stress hormones are supposed to be an alarm system. A quick spike, a fast response, a return to baseline. That's the design. But when the alarm never stops ringing, the brain starts to change. The parts that handle memory and planning shrink under the pressure. The parts that handle threat detection grow. Your brain literally rebuilds itself around the world you live in. If your world is full of deadlines, demands, and the quiet hum of never being enough, your brain doesn't build a cathedral. It builds a bunker. And a bunker is a terrible place to be creative. It's an even worse place to start things. Here's the twist that makes all of this make sense. The part of your brain that does willpower is the first part to go offline. There's a researcher named Amy Arnsten at Yale who studies exactly this. The prefrontal cortex is the newest part of your brain. It's the part that plans, that resists, that says no to the second slice. And it is exquisitely sensitive to stress. The moment your stress response activates, the prefrontal cortex loses power. It's a biological fact. You lose access to your own thinking brain under threat. That's why you can't find the words during an argument. That's why panic feels dumb. And that's why, on the days you're most stressed, the idea of starting feels physically impossible. It's not. It's your architecture. The system that runs you when you're calm is not the system that runs you when you're drowning. You've been trying to use a willpower muscle that your nervous system switches off at the exact moment you need it. That's not a character flaw. That's a design feature of a brain under threat. So here's the counterintuitive truth. The opposite of laziness is not motivation. The opposite of laziness is safety. Think about the last time you did the thing you'd been avoiding. What was different? Maybe the deadline was on fire. Maybe someone was waiting. Maybe you were somewhere else, or with someone else, or on a walk, and the pressure was off, and suddenly it felt easy. That wasn't a coincidence. When your nervous system feels safe, it climbs back up the ladder. The thinking brain comes back online. Effort becomes possible again. Not because you became a better person. Because the conditions changed. Your system is not asking you for more discipline. It's asking you for evidence that it's safe to engage. And that changes everything about how you should respond to yourself. The researchers Emily and Amelia Nagoski spent years studying stress, and they found something simple hiding inside all the complexity. A stress response is a cycle. It starts with a threat. It ends with completion. And the cycle doesn't complete itself. Your body needs the finish. A run, a cry, a breath, a conversation with someone who gets it. Something that says, in the language the body understands, the threat is over. The danger passed. You can stand down now. Most people never finish the cycle. They just chain one stress response onto the next, for years, and then they wonder why their body is so tired that it can't start anything. You're not tired because you're lazy. You're exhausted because your system never got the signal that it's over. So what do you do with this? Not what the productivity gurus tell you. You don't shame yourself harder. Shame is a threat. Every time you call yourself lazy, your nervous system hears danger and drops another rung. You don't white knuckle. Willpower is the wrong tool, because the tool itself goes offline. You do something quieter. You give your system evidence. Tiny completions. A small task, finished, on purpose. That's a complete stress cycle. A walk that ends. A page that gets written, even a bad one. A promise to yourself that you keep, even a tiny one. Every completion is a note in the ledger on the other side. It's not safe yet. It says. Effort works. Effort ends. Effort is survivable. And you rebuild in the company of safe people. The newest rung on the ladder is connection, and it's the fastest way back up. A person who doesn't need you to perform. A conversation that isn't a transaction. Your nervous system reads the people around you like a weather report. If it's safe with them, it learns the world is safe. If it's never safe, it never reopens. You can't heal a shutdown alone, because the shutdown itself is what keeps you alone. You have to break the loop from the outside. And that's why the answer to I can't start is almost never try harder. It's reach out. It's get up. It's tell someone. It's start smaller than feels ridiculous. Small enough that the threat system doesn't notice. Small enough that it can't say no. Then let the completion do the teaching. Here's the truth nobody puts on a poster. The lazy person is a myth. There is no human being on earth who consistently chooses not to try because they just don't care enough. Behind every wall of procrastination is a nervous system running a very old, very smart protection program. You don't beat that program by hating it. You beat it by teaching it, one finished thing at a time, that it's safe to come back online. So, you're on the couch again. The laptop is open. The cursor is blinking. But the voice in your head is wrong. It was always wrong. You're not lazy. You never were. You're a nervous system that learned, through real evidence, that effort was dangerous. And what learned that, can learn the other thing. Not by force. Not by shame. One small completion at a time. The cursor is still blinking. That's not a judgment. That's an invitation. You don't have to do the whole thing today. You just have to tell your body, with one finished, tiny, survivable thing, that it's safe to try again.